And so I go in there and it's just like, yeah, girls want to have fun. Yeah, yeah, whatever, you know. And then I get the gig, and I tell the manager comes to me and he's like, "Hey, listen, man, Cyndi wants you in the band. You want to do it?" And I was like, as a stupid naive kid, like, I don't know if I want to do this. And the look he gave me
Yeah.
was, I mean, I'll never forget the look. It was just like, and he put his arms around me and said, "Listen, let's go outside. I want to talk to you for a second."
So,
Yeah.
obviously, I don't think we've met, but we have a mutual friend in the the Scottish John Bonham. Oh, he'd hate me saying that, Mr. Doug Moore.
Jeff. Yes.
So how did you meet Jeff? How long does that go back?
Oh man. Let me see if I can get it straight. It was either like 86, 85 or 86, and I'm up and coming, and I think I met him in a studio. He was doing a session in New York. And, I was like, this impressionable drummer, up and coming drummer. And even just the idea of being in a recording studio was like, oh man, it's really exciting. And I mean, he was just so sweet and such a kind, just right off the back, man.
Yeah.
Right off the back with him. And then when I got like my first gig with Cyndi Lauper in 86, and I finally went to London, I looked him up and, he showed me around all his friends and
Yeah.
And I fell in love with London.
Right.
And a year or two later, I ended up there. And I mean, first this band called me. They were up and coming, and they were kind of like, I think the record company was trying to tout them as the next Tears for Fears.
Right.
This band called So. And so I worked with them for a couple of months. And then as like the tour finished up, I was staying at the the Olympia Hotel? Is that what is that still no the Columbia?
Columbia.
The Columbia
I mean, that
Hotel.
was where all
Yes.
the bands stayed.
That's where all the bands stayed at. Yeah, and I get a phone call and it's like Simon Le Bon.
As you do.
I mean, just by chance. Like I don't even know why I was even in a hotel room.
Yeah.
But just by chance, and I don't know how they got. I never really figured out who was the person who got me. Like, hey, there's this guy Sterling Campbell. I don't know who the person was, but anyway, they called me, say, hey, listen, we're looking for a drummer. We're going on tour, and so I know it seems like I'm being irresponsible, but there's nobody in front of me. So. But I'll put it on anyway, just to look responsible. Anyway, which is actually, I'll show you. I'll give you a little. It's pretty.
That's
Pretty
crazy.
sparse out there. It's beautiful though, man. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's good to see people getting out. And everybody's being very responsible. Like most of the times when I'm out, there's not a lot of traffic, so
Yeah.
I can take the mask off. But anyway, so so they said we're looking for a drummer for the tour. They just did this album, The Big Thing, and so I went down and met up with them, and actually the first initial thing I didn't know like if it was official or not. But then I met up with John Taylor, and we just hit it off really well. And so, I'm going on tour with Duran, and then a couple of months later, they asked me if I wanted to join the band.
Yeah, that is cool.
Which was kind of a like, all right.
Yeah, why not?
Like everything was like that. I was like, okay, and they were really great. They were really gracious, and they let me into their world. And I was kind of laughing because it, even I did like got a little bit of what it was like. Quote, I was a sideman. Now I'm a member of the band, and You know, it was just nuts.
Yeah, yeah.
But fun, you know. I mean, I just had fun with it. And yeah, we traveled the world and did another album, the Liberty album. And then, you know, 90s came and then we parted ways. And but I stayed, you know, I stayed in touch with Nile Rodgers. So Nile had, I think it was 92 or 92 or 93. You know, he had two albums he was doing in particular. And that was, one was the B-52s record.
Right.
Called Good Stuff.
Yes.
And the other was the David Bowie record. You know, and getting that call, hey, would you want, it's like, would you want to do?
Yeah. Do I need to think about it? Let me think about it. Okay.
Are you available to do, you know? I mean, I don't know if you know the history, but the drummer, Dennis Davis, lived in my building in 1977, 78.
Yeah.
And I ran into him in the lobby, and he gave me a ticket to go see David.
Wow.
It was like the Heroes Tour, basically. And that was like, the game changer for me.
Yeah. I mean, that is amazing. The guy who's the drummer with Bowie is living in your building when you're a kid.
It's so unbelievable. Not only that, but just catching him at that very moment. You know what I mean? Like catching him, you know, all I had to do was, you know, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And Dennis was oh man, he was amazing. That whole period was amazing in New York. It's a lot going on. Like music was changing, the styles of music. You know, hip hop was emerging. You still had disco. You had all that kind of post-punk stuff happening, and synthesizers were starting to become more prevalent. So by the time the 80s hit, you know, and I think after probably people saw that 78 tour, not just myself, but probably, you know, anybody from that movement took that into the 80s.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. From Depeche Mode, and, you know, I'm sure like somebody saw that tour.
Yeah.
Because that tour was like definitely a game changer from anything I've ever seen. And I, you know, for believe it or not, for a 14-year-old living in New York, my family were music lovers. So, and I come from a big family, and my brothers, my mother saw everything from the Billie Holiday and all, you know, great things. So my brother seeing all the Motown stuff. And in 1974, I saw James Brown at the Apollo. Like,
no.
He had a matinee show. $2.
Wow.
You know, James is at his prime.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like all that stuff was on fire at that time, you know, Al Green and all, and it was always like this thing of playing in New York City, you know. So there was always, so I got to see Elton John, 76. I got to see a lot of things. So for me, to play Madison Square Garden, you had to be one of those guys back in the day. You had to be Zeppelin, you had to be the Stones, you had to be Stevie Wonder, you had to be Sly and Family Stone. You had to be these giants. Yeah. So to know somebody from my building, and the other thing was, it was almost like seeing Star Wars, because I kind of knew Fame, but I wasn't really like that invested in David's music yet. So there's nobody here, so I can take this. You know, it was like it looked like a spaceship. Yeah. You know, Madison Square Garden, the way the set looked. David comes out doing an ambient piece, basically. Yeah. And he's playing the Chamberlain, and it's not like drums and big gigantic thing. It's actually very somber, but it totally set up the show. So that was amazing for me, you know? It was definitely like, I walked in one way, and then I was playing drums, but I was like, okay. Yeah. This is it. This is it, yeah. and it was funny, because from there on in, you know, like, it was almost like when you go to Spotify, like, it's like, you know, because I grew up, I mean, it was wide ranging. I grew up like on Chicago, Elton, you know, all the R&B stuff. And like I said, all that stuff was on fire. Joni Mitchell. Yeah. But when I heard that, you know, it's like, okay, this is something new. So it was kind of like, when you do Spotify, it's like, well, if you like this, you'll like this. So I I did my own Spotify, and that's what I kind of searched out over the course of my life. So I kind of felt like by the time I got into the 80s, you know, I had a kind of clear picture because I felt like I was in the 80s when I saw that show.
Yeah.
The way he looked, the way the show looked, you know, and, you know, and obviously, like in hindsight now, those records were very groundbreaking. Low. I mean, it was basically he was doing Low and Heroes.
Yes, and playing Madison Square Gardens, playing what would now be considered left field crazy music.
Yeah. I mean, that was it's pretty. It's just pretty. Like I said, it was pretty groundbreaking, and like just the one. Honestly, the initial reaction was, I know that guy on stage. You know, that's how. I mean, I think it just carried that. I mean, well, at least in my head, because I was just such a romantic about it. You know, it was like being in a superhero film. That was literally my Marvel heroes. You know.
Yeah.
And obviously, like then getting introduced to something you have no idea what it's about, and then being completely, you know, like I said, it's like seeing Star Wars. You're introduced to Luke Skywalker for the first time, and all these things. That's what it was like, you know. And you know, it stuck.
Yeah.
And it was always like this goal. Okay, I don't know how, but that is what I want to do. That's who I want to play with.
Yeah.
You know, it was either that or, you know, I mean, Stevie, because Dennis left Bowie for Stevie Wonder after that.
Oh, really?
Just to go to show you, like, where he was at, you know.
And he lived in your building. That's crazy.
And he lived in my building. Actually, in New York, on the Upper West Side, it was pretty amazing. I mean, like, there was just something about the arts and people completely connected to it. There were 5 drummers who practiced in the building.
Wow.
Could you imagine that? So I would listen I would listen outside my window. I could tell like somebody in the 8th floor was playing. I knew his style and everything. But literally, there's 5 drummers.
Wow.
And Dennis was one of them. And Dennis, I mean, you know, obviously the people coming in and out of his place was like, is incredible. So I took my friend who I grew up with, Zach Alford, and I took him up to meet Dennis. Zach and I have been like kind of bouncing off of each other since then. Like we both done the B-52s.
Yeah.
I got him on the Bowie gig. And he's been playing with Nana, like 99 Love Balloons Nana, and we both did that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have like this whole history with doing each other's gig. And the guy who originally played like on Love Shack on the B-52 stuff, Charlie Drayton, he and I went to high school together.
Wow.
And we would just like not go into class and just hang out.
Yeah.
And he was already working. So it was fun times, man. It's like, it's totally like a freaking, you know, now we have Netflix. It's just like a Netflix doc.
Yeah. But it's amazing because a lot of people who make music like you and me and Jeff and what have you, but also just a lot of music fans. And I know for a fact that they think that people like David Bowie and David Byrne, it's like, how could you ever possibly be able to play with them? Because it's like even though they are like superstars, but they're human beings who interact with other people to make music.
The thing that's crazy with all of this stuff, man, for me, what that surprised me about David, and not just David, but Brian Eno, it's like Ricky Gervais, man. It's like, it's all funny. We were just, I mean, my whole tenure with David, and this goes off and on like 20-something years, I would say predominantly we're laughing about something.
Yeah.
In fact, when we did the Reality album, which is like 2002, 2003, the way we went about making the record was, you know, we usually get the drums first. So it was me and Mark Plotty would play bass. And we would like work in the morning from like 11 to like 1 o'clock we'd do lunch. But literally every day, The Office had just kind of come out. David had VHSs of The Office, and we would watch that. That was the way we would do it. Like, we would watch a full 1 or 2 versions of The Office, and then go back to work.
Wow.
And I just remember, I just remember like there was times where it was still like imprinted in my mind. I couldn't even count off the songs.
Yeah.
Because I was still laughing from just like, I mean, I don't even know if he even said anything, just his look, his face.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, that to me, that was like one of the most amazing things about everything working with David was just how much fun it was. And we were just laughing about everything.
Yeah.
And working with Bowie and Eno too. We did an album together outside, and it was all jokes.
Yeah. Did you imagine them to be so serious about their art and intellectualizing everything, wouldn't you?
I think it all has to do with a sense of humor. The Beatles, The Who.
Yeah.
I mean, for Townsend to let freaking Moon have artistic license like that, and the stuff he was doing in one of those documentaries, he was just like, it was just funny. Some of the stuff he did was just so preposterous, you know. So I think sense of humor has always played a role, especially with the deeper ones, you know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's that thing, you know. I mean, there's loads of people you must know loads of people who are like demon players, and they're so technically this and they're amazing, but they haven't got that side that people want to hang out with.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can't imagine the music business being just, you know, you're going to come across all kinds of people from all different, how they grew up, and you know, they're into music, but they're just different personalities, you know?
Yeah. So when did you start playing then? Because obviously there's Dennis in the building and all this amazing scene happening. But when did you actually go? Were you playing before that moment, or what?
Well, I was emerging in it, I guess. It's funny, man. You know, New York City, man, I still have a very romantic thing about it because there weren't a lot of things, right?
Uh-huh.
You don't have all the stuff that you had now. And you grew up, you see these movies like The Godfather and everything, or The Goodfellas, and it's like the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And I lived in a neighborhood. I lived in a block full of buildings where you knew everybody on the block, and you knew all the families. And, you know, you grow up with these people, and you have to make up stuff. There's nothing to do. So you see this a lot. People make a fake soccer pitch, you know, out of garbage cans and stuff like that, you know. So, like, the fact that music was in my family, my brothers had stuff. I didn't have money to buy music at that time, you know. We came from very humble beginnings. But what I got out of it was longing, the longing of it, you know. So I would have to either wait to listen to radio and whatever was on the radio, or wait till my brothers, you know, they wouldn't let me play the record player myself. So whatever they played. So I don't know why, but banging was the easiest thing, like a percussive thing. So we would just hang out and like sit on cars, and I would bang on the cars. And I got good at figuring out what a beat was.
Right.
And people like, yo, you know, it'd be like, it got to the point where it was like, the guy's like, yo, Sterling, play that beat, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And that's really how it started. And then one day, one Christmas morning, I woke up, and I don't know, my mother must have picked up on it. And there were drums.
Wow.
And of course, once again, there's no way on Christmas Day she's going to let me play drums in the house. So my brother, like, took me away. And I'm, like, jonesing to play drums all day. And, I mean, basically that's how it started, you know? And I really got into listening to music, like, on a deep level. And like I said, everything for me in my years of listening to music, you know, whatever happened in the 60s, it all, like, went to another level in the 70s. You know, all the Beatles split off, they were able to do their own thing. You had Zeppelin was at their height. You know, Earth, Wind & Fire were at their height. Joni Mitchell was at her height. Prog rock was at its height. Jazz fusion was at its height. And that was swimming around me all the time, you know? And And my brothers were really good about, like, they were music lovers, so they would know every little part of a song. Even the mistakes you would hear on these old records, but they would know the synthesizer, they'll know the Chick Corea solo on a, you know. So there was a lot going on. And also, there was this place called McKell's where I grew up, which was like where all of that kind of, that jazz funk thing was really kicking in. I couldn't get into the bar, but there was I could just stand up and I can see inside. And there wasn't a lot of crazy, I mean, you could just listen to music being played and you can watch what's going on one night and Steve Gadd's playing with Stuff, with Richard T. You know what I mean? Like at a drop of a dime, all these people would be in there, Steve Ferroni. And I would go there and just stand outside and look at all the bands. And then eventually I got in. And it was so crazy because I didn't know what Coke did and what it did to people. I always felt like people were really excited.
They're
like,
so
man,
talkative.
Yeah, man, yeah, you a drummer too? Yeah, it's really great, man. And I was like, wow, that's so nice. I'm so excited about my career. And there was a lot. So, like I said, beyond just the records, now, I mean, you can see the live version of it, you know? I mean, these are all the records that are being sampled and, you know, people obviously tripping on. And also, like I said, New York was the place where people would come. That was like the final stop. And that's the one, the most nervous. You're playing New York, you're playing Carnegie Hall, you're playing the Apollo. So you got to see some good shows.
So how did you get, sort of like that Cyndi Lauper was like the first kind of, I don't know, sort of name, if you like, that came along. So how did that come about?
Like I said, I'm coming into the 80s, like I already got, I kind of, you know, the 80s, like it was taking off a lot of stuff that was coming out of England, you know? There's Duran, you know, all of a sudden there's sequencers and there's drum machines and all that stuff. And I think a lot definitely spawned. I was from David and from the German movement. Obviously, David knew about all that stuff. And like I said, I started honing in on that around 78. And so by the time I got to high school, I went to High School of Music and Art, you know, I'm playing on the scene. I'd never really been the downtown scene. I'm an uptown boy. I go downtown, there's this whole other thing happening. I took an ad for a punk rock band, which we didn't stay punk too long because there was too much stuff going on. Like, dude, you would want to stick to that, you know? You know, we play clubs and all of a sudden you hear Once in a Lifetime for the first time and it's like, what the hell is this, you know? So you had a new emergence of people who were on fire. And I definitely, because my ears were already in that space of David. So that's, you know, I'm constantly listening to that stuff. So I was kind of primed for, you know, probably instead of like somebody's super studio and doing a certain kind of record, I was kind of primed to do that kind of music. So I'm playing a gig one night with my band and this bass player comes up to me and says, listen, Cyndi Lauper's looking for a drummer. So she's auditioning. And I'll be honest with you, bro, my head was still in like, no, I'm going to play with David Bowie. So I did. So I went into it where like, I didn't really care. You know, just stupid, naive, you know,
you're a kid, aren't you? That's what we do,
And so I go in there and it's just like, yeah, girls want to have fun. Yeah, whatever, you know. And then I get the gig. And I tell the manager comes to me and he's like, hey, listen, man, Cyndi wants you in the band. You want to do it? And I was like, you know, as a stupid, naive kid, like, I don't know if I want to do this. And the look he gave me. Was, I mean, I'll never forget the look. It was just like, and he put his arms around me and said, listen, let's go outside. I didn't want to talk to you for a second. And so I ended up with the Cyndi gig. And that's how it all started, you know? It was a wonderful thing, and one after the other, like that happened. And a year later, I did a show with Cameo.
Wow.
Hey, I'm just back in my bill. I want to show you something.
Okay, magic.
This right here, I would say this is the spot where I met Dennis.
Oh, cool.
Like right at this spot.
Wicked.
He had a cymbal bag, and I was like, it's like, hey, where you going? I was 14.
Yeah.
Where you going? Hey, I got a gig tonight. I'm playing at Madison Square Garden with David Bowie. and just hey, you want to go?
Wow.
That ticket, I too bad I don't have it, but
Yeah.
it's $19.
$19.
$19 to go see David
At Madison.
to do the Low Heroes tour. It's pretty mind blowing.
But that's amazing. You're still in the same building as well, so you still live the same spot.
Well, I actually moved back. Yeah, I mean, because look, New York. There's a few places where you can get the park. You get both Riverside and Central Park, and I don't know. There's just something about it, man. It's just a home feeling.
Yeah.
And give me 1 second, man. I'm just getting back. Good. Yeah. So that like the Cyndi thing led to me playing. Then I got a call. My friend Sammy Marandino, who Sammy's a really interesting dude. He was one of the first. Him and this guy Jimmy Braylow, they were both drummers, but they were the ones who went out and became like the kind of pseudo drum programmer. Right, like okay. New thing, and Sammy was one of those guys, and Jimmy Braylow, and they did everything. I befriended Jimmy Braylow because he was working on the Cyndi Lauper record, but he also worked on So by Peter Gabriel. Right, okay. Sammy's big. He was doing tons of jingles and everything, but he did all the music for Cameo, the Word Up and that record. Shit. So he was playing drums with them, and at one point something else happened, and he asked me if I would be interested in going out with Cameo, which was it was a trip. I imagine. It was a trip. But that didn't last too long. And that's when I made my jump to London. Mm-hmm. I decided I'm going to London. That's where I need to be. And like that thing happened with Dave, with Duran first. Yeah. And that was a great time to be in London too, because, it was, it's post, it's like that, Live Aid happened and, we got up to the Joshua Tree and things are starting to shift. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You had like, so I was there when like the whole the Manchester thing happened, and there was other, like they did Mind Bomb. I remember that. And Bjork was starting to come into play. So my tenure there, like all that stuff started, and Stock Aitken and Waterman. Be so lucky. I like that stuff. Hey, I was talking to someone else in this series of stuff we're doing about Stock Aitken and Waterman, and you say, when you take away the production, they're actually really good. Some of them are great songs. I love Mel and Kim. Oh, Mel and Kim, legends. Yeah. Absolute legends. So yeah, it was like for like a person from America and to be there, it was like you got this whole other education, Yeah. And watching the whole club thing happen. Of course. Yeah. So it's it was like a little fantasy, man, in hindsight, It's like, God, all that happened, Yeah. Seal. Yeah. When that first record came out, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But isn't it amazing to be, everyone I've spoken to has got the same sort of thing, and it's about drive and just like the Star Wars moment where you go, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do that. Everything's changed. I'm doing that. Well, impact. It's impact, man. Just like whatever the people saw the Beatles for the first time. That impact it's beyond, like it just, boom, and it just drills in, It doesn't like pop off. It's not like, ding, ding. Yeah. They're big brush strokes, man. Like, especially in hindsight now, like seeing that, like seeing some of the stuff, like, and you're just like, I'm still scratching. Like, how did they do that? Yeah. How do they have that output in such a short period of time and everything counted? Yeah, and everything's good. Even the silly songs are good. Mm-hmm. It's like, but maybe that's why it was such a, relatively, for a lot of artists now, that's a long period. But back then, like, that amount of time was pretty short.
maybe that's why it didn't go on much longer, because it's like, how can you keep being that creative, you know, and pushing boundaries all the time?
Well, everybody was definitely feeding off of each other.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm just trying to imagine like David, like him coming to America, like, okay, he's got play because Ziggy's happening and he's traveling. He's getting, you know, he can go places where like, and be exploratory, like, whoa, what's this, you know?
Yeah.
There's something he didn't knew that existed, and then here's a whole nother like thing happening. And David just picked up on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to see New York circa 1970, you know, the 70s, and you know, and it was amazing. It's like a set.
Yeah.
It's like a Scorsese set,
Yeah.
and it really was like that. When you watch some of those movies, when you watch like Taxi Driver, it really was
like that. Yeah, yeah. But then you said, like, you know, you imagine Bowie being there, and then all of a sudden, oh, here's Iggy. You know, Iggy's just appeared, and like, hey, David, check this shit out, or whatever it might be. And then it's like, oh my God. And then him then influencing Iggy and the blah, blah, blah. And then all that then stuff filters back to the UK for the punk scene.
Yes.
It's crazy, crazy. So how, obviously, you know, when you get these calls and like, once you got past the youthful exuberance of like, maybe Cyndi Lauper, I don't know. So the manager puts his arm around you and goes, hey, come on, Sterling.
Well, actually, to go back to the whole thing, when I was like that about it, then when I played with her, I was like, whoa.
Holy shit, yeah.
She's a freaking force, man. She's a force of nature.
Yeah.
That's why she's still working.
Exactly. And become kind of iconic as well. You know, because a lot of people at the time were, you know, people get really snobbish about pop music. You know, particularly like hardcore music. Yeah.
I was. I mean, believe me, bro, there's moments where like you can watch some of those videos and people like kind of like, yo, that's what you were wearing. It's like, that was the compromise. You should have seen what she had me wearing. And I had to fight tooth and nail. I'm serious. I'm like freaking, yo.
I'm not going that far.
They're like, oh, look at you. That's funny clothes. Like, bro, that was the compromise. I had to fight. Like, I don't want to wear that. I'm literally with the wardrobe person. Like, come on. What else you got?
Yeah. I'm a serious musician. Come on, please.
Oh, they were good times, though. It's so freaking innocent, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that spirit of music is that anyway, isn't it? I know people get, you know, we all get jaded from time to time and all that kind of stuff. When I was speaking to Jeff a couple of 3 or 4 days ago, it was about that time when he like felt he was on a treadmill of like session drumming. So he just decided, I'm just going to not do it for 18 months. I'm going to start a band. So he just wrote a bunch of songs with his mate. Then they got a band together, made an album, it fell to pieces, and then he plugged back into it, like refreshed with that whole excitement again, you know.
Yeah. Well, oh, by the way, like Jeff did a record by Joan Armatrading that also messed me up.
Well, that was kind of one of his first things, wasn't it?
What was that record called again? It was like a blue cover. I mean,
I know the one, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And he had style. And I was trying to have like, check that my man out. He's like, he had a whole vibe going on.
Yeah. I saw him play with Joan Armatrading, and I forgot all about this. Like the first time that my old band that I was in, we like played Glastonbury main stage in '92, and Jeff was playing drums for Joan Armatrading. And it kind of stuck in my mind, this little guy. And then when I started working with him 10 years ago, it's like, it's you. You know, it's funny, like, obviously music is global, all these things, but you always tend to bump into or come around to the same people at certain different points. You know, it's almost like, without being too astral about it, there's some little story that's been woven around who...
Well, it's also like what you're into. Like once I got the David gig, you know, and I went to see David Bowie. So in the '80s, like I didn't know how I was gonna get there, but like it was like a chance thing. This band was punk, but we ended up like something like we were running around the same time as Madonna. So I think it was multimedia, and it was like a cross mix of a lot of different things after a while. You know, we just didn't have that extra step to go to that place, and Madonna did. You know,
yeah.
We were in the same music. There was this place called the Music Building, And it was very cool, man. Like I was playing a couple of bands, and so the Beastie Boys was still a punk band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They weren't even a rap band yet. There were a lot of cool things, and it was amazing. Just like in London, there was like all these cool places to play, and all these emerging bands. We became the band that would open up for all these bands. So we opened up for Susie and the Banshees.
Wow.
We opened up. I mean, it was crazy.
Wicked.
Like the amount of bands we opened up for, and all the new MTV things, and seeing MTV for the first time. And seeing even Duran, it's like, damn, it's like James Bond.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're getting the girls. It's like,
and they don't have to kill anyone.
It's amazing how naive you are when you're looking at this stuff. But it's like, man, and they were like these exotic places too.
Yeah.
You never seen that before.
Yeah. That's funny. And the funny thing is, obviously, because you then joined Duran Duran, but the fact that they're from a part of England called Birmingham. Which is like the least glamorous.
Yeah. It's like Slough. No offense, Birmingham, but.
So, like that, when you get those calls, do you have are you one of those guys who are like, okay, I need to find out about the artist, I want to hear demos, I want to hear that, or are you just like, that's cool, I'll just turn up?
Everything has been. So, like after '92, and after that work with David, I get another call, and I don't know if like '93, '94. Okay, well, first of all, '80s are over, it's '90s, and I don't know what the hell's going on. What's alternative? What's I mean, and obviously Nirvana came, and it's like you just say, and it's like, get the shoulder pads out.
Let's go back to being punks.
Let me wear some jeans. But no, I get a call from the management of Soul Asylum, and they had signed their first. They signed their first major release with Columbia, and so they're doing a record in New York at the Power Station, and that costs money.
Yeah,
and I guess they weren't getting the results. That because Michael Beinhorn was producing, and Michael is very particular about what he wants. And I'll be honest with you, it was once again, okay, it's like, okay, sure, it's like, I don't know what alternative is. I don't know what alternative, but I don't know. But it did go boom, ska, boom, boom, ska. I can do that.
I can do it, yeah.
I can do that. No, but I was just using my imagination with all that stuff, I mean, it was kind of like my career's been like, I would do something and it's almost like it's like that. I kind of I feel like I've always kind of faked it a little bit, with certain things.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. But maybe you just bring your thing in, which is that, I don't know, to say innocence is to make it sound wrong, but you know what I mean? It's that, like, just more, maybe it's
Well,
this.
anyway, it worked. It turned out to be a huge record for them. And then I went off to work with some other artists. I mean, and actually after that, another record with I did one record with David, Black Tie White Noise in 92, 93, I can't remember. And then he called me up again, which is like Kubrick.
Yeah.
Because he called me up personally this time. It wasn't Niall, it was him.
Yeah,
hey, stop it. And it's like, hey, I'm doing the record in, Montreux, Switzerland, where Bowie and Eno's producing. And it's like,
yes, please.
Are you available?
Yes.
It was amazing. Montreux was the winter time. We were recorded at Mountain Studios, which I always read on the back of the covers, like all the records, all the Queen records that were done there. I was like, wow, Mountain Studios, and I had this great apartment right across the street.
Wow.
Right across, not even across the street, literally like a 5-foot walk to the studio.
Perfect.
And every day, Brian and I would go for breakfast before we went to the studio. And he would just tell me these amazing stories. And basically, there was no songs. And Brian was pretty much kind of like, David was there, kind of 10 feet from me painting.
Right, okay.
The whole time.
Wow.
And Brian was doing his thing, like we're going to do role playing and let's try this. I'm going to put a CD on of the Supremes, but don't play that. Just use that as a guide. You know, we were just trying all these crazy things, and the result was the album Outside. You know, and of course David and Brian, like they take all that found material, and that's their genius. They could take that and make it into something.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, that was one of the most amazing experiences, like to do that, you know, to get to work with the two of them together, you know. Yeah. So it was kind of a cool thing, like to go from Nile Rodgers to Eno and eventually to Visconti.
It's like three absolute legends working with David.
Yeah.
And then they've got such different styles as well. As you said, obviously, like Nile is more, okay, this is focus, this is the song. Eno's like, whew. Well, David can be painting.
It's an incredible thing to watch. You know, I wish I was a little bit more, because I was, you know, like honing it, you know, of course, looking at a board at that time, like I didn't know anything about that. You know, I know a lot more now. And I just wish I was more, because I would have been just like more honing in on what's going on, you know. Because there was a lot going on, you know. Like David Richards was the like all the people who were involved was pretty amazing, you know.
Yeah.
Because that album was with Reeves and Erdal Kazilkai and Mike Garson, and once again we were just having a ball.
Fun,
man. We were just having a laugh, basically.
Yeah.
And so after that, David said he was gonna tour it, and nothing happened. And all of a sudden, Soul Asylum calls me back. And says, hey, we're doing another record with Butch Vig producing.
Right, okay.
And I'm like, yeah, cool, I'm in. And then like after the record was done, they asked me to join the band. And you know, I okay, I'm in the 90s.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. I've done the 80s, I got into the 90s.
No more shoulder pads and, you know, trying to look freaking whatever, glossy. I was kind of over it too. Like, you know, there was a period where like I wanted to be like a rock star, you know, but then I was like, oh, I just want to make the music, you know, I don't really care about all the other stuff, you know. And just I think I just find it that honestly, just straight up from day one, I've always found music fascinating. Like, so now I go back to records and I'm listening to them in a completely different way.
Same, yeah.
Because you lived it in a certain way, and now you've been given like kind of the DNA of it. But then you're hearing other things in it, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, that those Elton vocals, those really kind of that you can hear that in Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water. Like, oh snap! Is that where, you know? You kind of question, is that where that's from? Is that, you know? And I think everybody was, I think what made all that stuff amazing, like you're in the studio and then like Stevie drops a record and it's like you almost have to like drop what you're doing and like go back to work again.
Yeah.
Figure out what to do, you know, and then David comes around. And not only that, but it goes like, you end up going backwards in time. Because now Ziggy's out and like, now like what, you know, he didn't have a new, it's like, let's go back to Hunky Dory. And then you find like, Hunky Dory. What?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing.
The Man Who Sold the World. What? You know, we found all these amazing things. You know, and it's timing and how everything happens, and
yeah,
like everybody was on fire, like that. So I think that's why everything was so potent. You know, Zeppelin was around, like in all different types of music. You know, and I'm sure, you know, like you hear Zeppelin, you hear Bomb, you hear James Brown.
Totally. Yeah. It's that non-genre specific thing where people are making music.
Yeah.
And not being, well, yeah, everyone's competitive to some degree, but not like, oh no, we can't listen to that because, hey, that's rock and you know, that's not James Brown. It's all a groove, isn't it? It's all a groove and songs and exploration of some degree to try and make something new that is then being influenced by the people that influence them.
And because people were faceless, now we're at this time where you got all this new documentaries and you find out, oh, shoot, the Wrecking Crew. What?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what?
Yeah.
They were knocking this out like, you know, I remember seeing like a spreadsheet, like you lost that love and feeling from 2 o'clock to 3, you know, 4:50. A classic done in that period of time. And next, and like another classic, and the
Yeah.
classic, and Hal Blaine and all those musicians
Yeah.
are just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And then you find out about Muscle Shoals, and you find it's so it. You can go back now to all that stuff, and even though you went through this experience with it, there's so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you keep going back further, you can, it gets deeper.
Yeah.
You with the composers and classical music and jazz and the output these guys had.
Oh, I mean, outright, you go back to Duke Ellington and just the sheer and the beauty of it. But obviously, these things were recorded really quickly. But it's the volume of tunes and influence. You go Duke Ellington, then you listen to Goodbye Put by Hat by Mingus. That is so Duke Ellington, but with Mingus' stamp on it, even though he was referencing Lester Young. I know it's like, oh my God. And then that mutates into what then becomes, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Same principle of like, let's do Voodoo Child from start to finish and mixed in 3 hours. What?
Yeah.
What? In the 90s, that would have been 3 hours spent on getting the hi-hat sound. Mm-hmm. And that's like record it and mix it.
Yeah, and it's really important. Like this neighborhood, once again, I go back to this neighborhood. Like in the 70s, it was amazing because all the jazz guys lived up here.
Uh-huh.
So by the time I got to high school, I was going to school with Ron Carter's kids.
No way.
And Miles lived on, I believe, 72nd Street.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And I think there was one point on 100th Street. I live on 100th Street, like 100th Street. I think, I remember crossing past, like just looking at Max Roach, Elvin Jones, and all these guys. A lot of these guys living on the Upper West Side or up in Harlem. Mm-hmm. And this was kind of the area for a lot of those guys. I went to school with Gil Evans' kids.
Wow, really?
In high school. So you would go to his house, and I really didn't know yet.
Yeah. But
I was always impressed because wow, that's Gil Evans, because I don't really know the music, but that's Gil Evans.
Yeah.
And they all lived and they were freaking running around the city, man.
Wow.
And you would see them. You would be walking down the street, and I would have to remember like this. So anybody's established, like somebody like a David and a Brian, because they were living here at one point. They're cross-pollinating with these people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's that exploration, isn't it? And, let's just do it. Why not? Listen to each other, get inspired by each other. And again, maybe with that slightly competitive edge. Well, if they're doing that, I'm going to take a bit of that, but do this with it,
Yeah.
But going to, obviously, because then you joined Soul Asylum, and you were also...
And that lasted for 4 years.
Uh-huh.
And, because I joined Soul Asylum, David calls me just as I'm joining, and he's about to do the Outside tour.
Shit.
And, I